There is someone who treated you in a way you did not deserve, who took what you gave and handled it carelessly, who had access to the real you and chose not to honor it. And right now, in this moment, they are living with the weight of what that cost them. The regret is real. The realization of what they had and what they lost is settling on them in a way that is heavy and specific and impossible to shake. They understand now what they did not understand when you were present. But here is what God wants you to know today. By the time the understanding arrived, you had already moved, and where you are now is somewhere they cannot follow. Stay right here, because this message is going to release something in you that has been waiting to be released. I am speaking directly to you right now. The chosen one who gave something real to someone who did not fully understand what they were receiving, who showed up with a quality of love and loyalty and presence that is genuinely rare, who stayed longer than was comfortable and extended more grace than was warranted and believed in the potential of the connection beyond what the actual evidence supported. You did not do any of that because you were naive. You did it because that is who you are. Because the depth of your love is not a performance, and it is not conditional on the other person performing correctly in return. It flows from who you are. And who you are is someone who gives genuinely and fully, and without the calculating reserve that most people apply to protect themselves from the cost of loving someone who does not love them back at the same level. And the person who received that love, who had daily access to what you were offering, made a series of choices that were careless with what you gave. That took your presence for granted, and your loyalty for an entitlement, and your patience for a permission to continue doing what they were doing. Choices that prioritized other things, sometimes other people, over what they had in you. Choices that communicated through action, even when the words said otherwise, that what you brought to the relationship was not the most valuable thing in their world. You absorbed those choices. You processed them. You tried to understand them. You extended grace for them. And at some point, after more grace had been extended than any reasonable accounting could justify, something shifted. The part of you that had been accommodating the choices finally said no more. Not in anger, not in retaliation. In the quiet, resolved, dignified way that happens when someone finally chooses themselves after a long season of choosing someone else. You stopped. You stepped back. You left the space that the relationship had been occupying, and you moved forward. Type amen if you know exactly what it felt like to finally stop accommodating someone who was not honoring what you were giving. Now let me tell you what happened on their side of that departure, because what happened in them when you left is important for you to understand. Not because their experience should change your decision. It should not. But because understanding what happened in them when you moved on is part of the full picture of what your departure meant. And that full picture matters for how you carry yourself going forward. When you left, there was an initial period where they did not fully grasp what had occurred. The absence registered as inconvenient, as something to be addressed when the timing was right, as a situation that could be managed and eventually corrected with the right words or the right gesture. They did not immediately understand that what had left was not the kind of thing that comes back simply because you reach for it, that what they had lost was not a position that another application could fill, that the specific thing you brought to their life was not interchangeable with something else that could be found if they looked. That understanding took time. It came in stages. First, the awareness that reaching for you was not producing what it had produced before, that the door they had always been able to walk back through was no longer responding to their approach, that you had moved somewhere they could not easily access. Then the growing recognition that the things they had compared you to unfavorably, the people and the options they had used to justify the carelessness, did not have what you had, did not carry what you carried, did not love the way you loved, did not create the specific quality of environment that you created simply by being present and being you. And finally, the regret, the specific, personal, impossible to shake regret of someone who had something genuinely valuable in their hands, and through a combination of inattention and arrogance and the assumption that you would always be there, let it go. That regret is not abstract. It is specific. It visits them in the quiet moments. It is present in the comparisons they now make between what they have and what they once had. It surfaces in the memories of what was possible with you that is not possible with whatever replaced you. Type I know they see it. Now if you receive the truth that the person who hurt you has come to understand the full weight of what they lost through how they treated you, let me speak to what too late actually means, because these two words carry a specific weight in this context that deserves to be examined carefully. Too late does not mean that their regret is not real. It is real. Too late does not mean that they do not genuinely wish things had been different. They do. Too late means that the window that existed for a different outcome, the window during which the right choices at the right moments could have preserved what was there, that window has closed. Not because you made a rule that closed it, but because you grew, because the season of waiting for them to see what they had and honor it properly produced in you a growth that made the previous
version of the dynamic no longer available to you even if you wanted to return to it. You are not the same person who was in that relationship. The growth you did after the departure, the formation that occurred in the season of rebuilding yourself without them, the clarity you developed about who you are and what you deserve and how you will and will not be treated, all of it has produced a version of you that the previous relationship was not designed to contain. You have outgrown the space that the relationship offered, and too late means that you cannot go back into a space you have outgrown, not because you are punishing them, but because you simply no longer fit there. Type I have outgrown that space. If you receive the truth that the growth you did after the relationship has produced a version of you that cannot fit back into what that relationship was offering. Now I want to speak to something that some of you are feeling as you receive this message, because the news that the person who hurt you deeply regrets it is not a simple thing to receive. It is complicated. On one level it is satisfying. There is a part of every human being that wants the person who hurt them to understand what they did, that wants the acknowledgement, that wants the regret to arrive as confirmation that the hurt was real and the treatment was wrong and the impact was significant. And that part of you is receiving something through this message, the confirmation that yes, they understand, yes, the regret is real, yes, they know now what they did. But on another level, the regret of the person who hurt you can be a trap, because regret, when it arrives in the form of their reaching back toward you, can be mistaken for change, can be confused with the transformation that would make a return safe, can feel in the moment of its expression like the thing you always wanted them to offer, the acknowledgement and the genuine understanding of their impact, and that feeling can temporarily override the wisdom of not going back. Because what you always wanted was not their regret after you left, what you always wanted was their appreciation while you were present. And regret is not the same thing as appreciation. Regret is what arrives when appreciation was absent long enough that what was not appreciated is gone. Take a moment and like this video because someone needs this message to strengthen their resolve at the exact moment when the person who hurt them is reaching back. Type regret is not appreciation if you receive the truth that the regret they now carry is the consequence of the appreciation they did not give when you were present, and that these two things are not the same. Let me tell you what is actually happening in the spirit right now that is more significant than their regret. Because while they are experiencing the consequence of what they did, something else is happening in your life simultaneously that is the more important story. God has been doing something with the space that their departure or your departure from them created. He has been filling it, not with a replacement that is simply a better version of what you had before, with something that was always the intended destination, something that the previous relationship was in the way of because it was occupying space and energy and emotional attention that belonged to what God was building toward. The previous relationship and everything you went through in it was not the destination. It was a detour from the destination, or at most a preparatory chapter that produced in you the specific qualities, the hard-won clarity, and the refined boundaries, and the deeper self-knowledge, and the proven understanding of your own worth that the destination requires you to carry. And now that the preparatory chapter has concluded, and the space has been cleared, and the specific things that needed to be formed in you through the experience have been formed, what God was always building toward is able to move into position. Stay with me in part 2 because God has more to say about what is moving into the space that person left.
about what your response to their regret should look like, about how to fully release what happened without minimizing what it cost, and about what the closed door of too late is actually protecting you from even now. Quantag, welcome back, Chosen One. If you are in part 2, what God spoke in part 1 has been landing in specific places. The confirmation that the regret is real, the understanding of what too late actually means, the recognition that you have outgrown the space the previous relationship was offering, and the awareness that what is moving into the cleared space is more significant than what left it. In part 2, God is going to address what is moving in, what your response to their regret should be, how to fully release what happened, and what the closed door of too late is protecting you from even in this moment. Type still moving forward if you are entering part 2 fully committed to the forward direction, regardless of what the regret of the person behind you is doing. Let me start with what is moving into the space that person left. Because the clearing of space in your life, the emotional and relational and energetic space that was occupied by the person who hurt you and that you reclaimed when you moved on, that space is not empty. It is not a gap waiting to be filled by whatever comes next. It is a prepared space, cleared for a specific purpose, being made ready for a specific quality of what is coming that could not arrive while the previous thing was occupying it. What is moving in is first a quality of peace that was not available while the relationship was present. Because relationships that require you to be consistently less than your full self in order to maintain them, relationships where your presence is taken for granted and your worth is not regularly honored, those relationships produce a low-level chronic tension that you may have become so accustomed to that you stopped noticing it as tension. It simply became the baseline. And only in its absence, only in the space after the departure, have you been able to feel the difference between what life feels like when you are not managing someone else's carelessness toward you, and what it felt like when you were. That peace, the peace of no longer absorbing someone else's failure to value you, is expanding in this season. And it is making room for things to grow in you and around you that the tension was suppressing. Clarity about your own desires, that the accommodation of their preferences was muffling. Creativity that was being consumed by the management of a relationship that required too much. Energy that was being drained by the constant low-level vigilance of loving someone who was not reliably safe with what you gave them. All of it is returning. And what it is returning to produce is significant. Type peace is expanding if you receive the truth that the space cleared by their departure is filling with a quality of peace and energy and clarity that was not available while the relationship was present. The second thing moving in is better. Not a slightly improved version of what you had, genuinely better. The quality of what God is releasing into the relational space of your life in this season is matched to the version of you that emerged from what you went through. Not the version that entered the previous relationship, the version that survived it, that processed it, that extracted from the pain the specific wisdom and clarity and self-knowledge that the pain was capable of producing. The version that knows now, in a way that could not have been known before, what genuine love looks like, in contrast to what you received. What genuine honoring of another person feels like, in contrast to the carelessness that was directed at you. What a relationship that costs the right things instead of the wrong things is like. This version of you is ready for something genuinely better. And genuinely better is what is coming. Not as a consolation prize for what you went through. As the natural consequence of being refined by fire into someone who can carry a love that is actually matched to the depth you carry. Someone who will see what you give and honor it specifically, rather than taking it for granted. Someone whose presence in your life will feel less like what you always had to manage, and more like what you always deserved to receive. Type better is coming. If you receive the truth that what is arriving in the cleared space is genuinely better than what occupied it before, because it is matched to the version of you that emerged from the process. Now let me speak about what your response to their regret should look like. Because the person who hurt you, and who now regrets it, is likely going to make contact, if they have not already, or if not direct contact, then the indirect signal of their changed behavior, or their reaching back through mutual connections, or the other ways that people who have not yet accepted a departure signal that they have not accepted it. Your response to their regret does not require you to manage their feelings about what they did. Their regret is theirs to carry. It is the natural consequence of their choices, and the weight of it belongs to them rather than to you. You are not responsible for relieving it. You are not obligated to make their process of reckoning with what they did more comfortable by returning to a dynamic that was not serving you. And you are not required to perform forgiveness in a way that reopens doors that closed for good reason. What you can do, from a place of genuine peace rather than performed grace, is release them, not for their sake, for yours, because carrying resentment towards someone whose choices wounded you is a weight that slows your forward movement. It keeps a thread of attachment between you and what is behind you, when all of your energy is needed for what is ahead. Releasing them is not forgiving the wrong as though it did not happen. It is removing from your own spirit the hook that their wrong planted there, freeing yourself from the ongoing cost of holding the weight of what they did. Type I release the weight if you are choosing right now to release the resentment and the ongoing cost of carrying what they did, so that your full energy is available for what is ahead. Let me speak to how to fully release what happened without minimizing what it cost, because there is a false version of release that rushes past the real cost in the name of spirituality. That says I have forgiven, and therefore the wound was not real, or the impact was not significant, or the time and the love and the investment that was mishandled was not worth grieving. This false release leaves the wound unacknowledged and therefore unhealed, and unhealed wounds do not simply sit quietly, they operate. They influence the choices and the patterns and the responses of the person who carries them, even when that person believes they have moved on. Real release honors the cost first. It says what was done was wrong. What was taken from me was real and valuable, and the handling of it was careless, and the impact of that carelessness was significant, and I am allowed to acknowledge all of that without minimizing any of it. And from that place of full acknowledgement, from the solid ground of a person who has been honest about what happened rather than rushing past it, the release becomes possible. Not the performance of release, the actual one, the genuine setting down of the weight after carrying it, has been fully acknowledged rather than the premature pretense of not carrying it in order to appear more spiritually advanced than you actually feel. Take the time to honor what the relationship cost, to grieve what was taken and not returned, to feel the full weight of having loved genuinely and had that love handled carelessly. And from that honest place of acknowledged cost, choose release. Choose to set down what you picked up in that season, not because it was not heavy, because carrying it into the next season is a choice to let the past govern your future. And the future that God has prepared for you deserves to be entered without the weight of what someone else did with what you gave them. Type Y, honor the cost and choose release if you are choosing to honor fully what the relationship cost you. And from that honest place to release the weight of it so that you can enter what is ahead without carrying it. Let me tell you what the closed door of too late is protecting you from right now. Because too late is not just a statement about the past, it is a protection in the present. The door that closed when you moved on is protecting you from the specific risk that the regret they now carry could be mistaken for the change you always needed. Because regret looks like change sometimes. It produces similar words, similar expressions of understanding, similar acknowledgments of what was wrong, and a heart that has loved someone and wanted them to understand the impact of their choices can confuse the regret with the transformation. But regret and transformation are fundamentally different things. Regret is the emotional consequence of a specific loss. It is what people feel when they realize the cost of their choices. Transformation is the structural change in the patterns and the character and the ways of relating that produced the harmful choices in the first place. Regret without transformation means that if the door were reopened and you were to walk back through it, you would eventually arrive at the same place. Because the conditions that produced the harm have not been addressed. Only the regret about the harm has appeared. The closed door is protecting you from the confusion of regret for transformation. It is keeping you on the side of the door where what is arriving is genuinely different from what was behind you, where what is coming has not been built on the same foundation that produced what you left, where the love you are moving toward has the quality that the love you moved away from promised but did not deliver. Stay on this side of the door. It was closed by God as much as by your growth. And what he is protecting you from by keeping it closed is the specific risk of a regret-fueled return that would cost you the genuinely better thing that is already in motion toward you. Type I stay on this side if you are choosing to remain on the side of the closed door where what is arriving is genuinely different from what you left. Let me close with what God wants you to carry out of this message into the rest of your day and the rest of your season. The person who hurt you has regrets. Let that be true without it needing to do anything in your life. It does not need to change your trajectory. It does not need to reopen a door that closed for good reason. It does not need to produce guilt in you about having moved forward. It does not need to be managed or addressed or responded to with anything other than the settled peace of someone who made the right decision and is continuing to live in the fruit of that decision. You are not too late. That phrase belongs to them, to the season that passed in which they had access to what you offered and the opportunity to honor it and did not. For you there is no too late. There is only now and forward. The person whose regret is heavy right now did not define you when they treated you carelessly, and they do not define you now in their regret. What defines you is what you chose when you chose yourself, what you built in the season after them, who you are becoming in the cleared space where their carelessness used to live. And that person, the one who chose themselves and built in the cleared space and kept moving forward, is someone worth celebrating. Someone who went through something real and came out with their integrity intact and their love still alive and their capacity for genuine connection not destroyed by the mishandling of it. That is you. And where you are going with that intact and that alive and that capacity still present is somewhere genuinely worth going. Type I am going somewhere worth going if you receive everything God has spoken through this message and you are choosing to keep moving forward into the genuinely better that is ahead rather than looking back at the regret of what is behind. They wish they had honored what they had while they had it. Let that be their lesson. Your lesson is different. Your lesson is that you were right about your own worth all along, and the place you are going honors that worth in a way the place you left never fully did. Keep going, chosen one. You are not going back, and what is coming is worth every step of the forward.